Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. This video is a little different. Tell us in the comments if you like the style or the previous one. Let's begin. In the previous episode, the hunt for Dr. Jemming had begun. But unfortunately, Jiangxi's little brother Aju had made things difficult for them. At that moment, Aju, who was hiding in the pit, noticed the change as well. He then jumps out and hits Xiao Xiao in the face with a sneak attack. Jiangxi was very angry when he saw this. Xiao Xiao, what are you doing? You believe his bullshit, and as soon as you let your guard down, you'll be back to normal in no time. Xiao Xiao, who heard this, was full of regret. She didn't expect her physical condition to disappear so easily. At this point, Aju mocked her with a cocky look on his face. So it was an injection. Now that the drug has worn off, I'll see how you die. Jiangxi, who saw the scene, was speechless. Looks like I still have to do it myself. And at the moment, Green Hair, who was observing from the shadows, was thrilled. This zombie is too strong. It even plans sneak attacks. Then he excitedly controls the keyboard and tries to get Aju to destroy them all. As Aju gets closer and closer, just as he was about to kill Xiao Xiao and the others, suddenly, Green Hair notices that there seems to be another person on the street. Looking at the slowly approaching Jiangxi, Aju stops moving at once. Just when the Green Hair thought he was in for another good show, Aju suddenly trembled and couldn't speak properly. At that moment, Jiangxi shouted with a black face, "Aju, didn't I tell you to guard the house? What are you doing here?" When these words came out, the few people next to them froze in their tracks. And at this moment, Green Hair in the surveillance room was also stunned. Because no matter how he manipulated, Aju's not responding at all. Turns out that with the appearance of Jiangxi, Aju's consciousness was instantly pulled back hundreds of years. That was his first meeting with Jiangxi. At the time, he thought Jiangxi was just a little zombie. I didn't realize it had only been a few years. Jiangxi has become the leader of the zombie world. The scene returns to the present. At this moment, Xiao Xiao and the rest of the team are in a state of disbelief. Because Aju, who was so arrogant a moment ago, is now so scared that he pissed his pants. Seeing this scene, Green Hair was in disbelief. He then pressed the console to continue controlling Aju. But watching Jiangxi approaching him step by step. At this moment, Aju is so scared that he doesn't dare to utter a word. Trance. Aju remembered that summer hundreds of years ago. Back then, he was still the king of the land. But it wasn't until the guy who called himself Jiangxi showed up. At first, Aju thought he was just a normal little zombie. But the next moment, he was being choked by Jiangxi. "From now on, you're my little brother. Is there anything you don't like?" Hearing this, Aju nods his head in agreement. The screen returns to the present again. At this moment, Aju is afraid to move. Now the Green Hair is furious. Then he cursed angrily. "You are immortal, what are you afraid of?" But since Aju used to disobey Jiangxi, and he was broken into pieces and hung on a tree by Jiangxi for hundreds of years as cured meat. So, no matter how Green Hair manipulates Aju, Aju's body instinctively tries to resist. Just then, the computers controlling the zombies were blown up by the Green Hair, and Aju runs away from the scene out of fear. Green Hair was dumbfounded by this scene, and the trio of spectators next to him were also dumbfounded. As for Jiangxi, he himself looks puzzled. "Aju, this kid is really something too. Am I that scary?" Seeing his plans spoiled by Jiangxi, Green Hair is furious. But just as he was about to continue, suddenly, a big hand landed on his shoulder. "Forget it. These zombies are just an appetizer. The real show is just starting now." With the sound of his voice, several helicopter gunships appeared at 10,000 meters. It's the president of the Abnormal Human Academy. Lanchi turns to the traitor and asks, "Speak, is Dr. Jemming down there?" "Yeah, they're hiding about 1,000 meters underground. And the total area is almost 10,000 square meters." Lanchi, who heard this, couldn't help but stare. How are we supposed to find it if it's so wide? But she hasn't even finished her sentence yet. The president of the Stainless Steel Academy next to her drew his sword and said, "You'll see what I'm going to do next." That said, he ejected from the helicopter like a sword. Lanchi, who saw the scene, couldn't help but spit it out. "You're quite the reckless man, aren't you?" But when he heard this, President Steel advanced instead of retreating. He waved his long sword from side to side at will. In the next second, the wind of the blade was already spiraling towards the ground. It's just for a little while. There was a loud bang on the ground. I didn't realize it was only a few breaths away. The president smashed a 100-meter deep hole in the ground. Lanchi was speechless at the moment. "He's too impulsive, isn't he?" Then she said to the president, "Making so much noise. What if there's a trap down there?" However, the president is not concerned about this. He even said that all traps are useless in the face of absolute power. And with that, he jumped out of the helicopter.
If you are enjoying the video, hit the like button. Please also subscribe as it helps our channel greatly.
Just now, when all the armed forces enter the dungeon, They searched and found no one suspicious. This confused both the president and the chairman. Did Dr. Jeming escape? At this point, the scene comes back to a tall building. Ming, all of them are rushing in. What do we do next? When Ming heard that, he rubbed his eyes and said, "It's time to show them my great experiment. Execute the plan." Meanwhile, in the dungeon, President Steele arrives at a cylindrical incubation chamber. Driven by curiosity, he peeled off the note on the incubation pod. The paper reads, "Zombie King inside. Open it if you're a man with balls." How could President Steele stand to see such words? He ordered his men to open it. But just then the chairman next to him suddenly said, "Our main purpose is to make arrests. Don't look for trouble." Seeing that they didn't fall for a green hair was in a hurry to report back to Ming that they had gone soft. Hearing this, Ming nonchalantly pulls a detonator out of his pocket. With the push of a button, next send. The remote-controlled bomb behind the incubation chamber starts counting down. The chairman heard the sound and felt the danger. But it's too late to dodge. A violent explosion was heard. The fire engulfed all the soldiers in the room in an instant. However, an explosion of this magnitude seemed to the president. Even tickling him would be easy. But when Ming learned that the things in the incubation bin had come out, he immediately laughed furiously, "Ha ha 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 ha," and said, "The destruction of mankind begins today. Come, my greatest experiment. Go slaughter all the humans. Even me." The screen came to the dungeon again. As the smoke slowly clears, President Steele and the chairman are both baffled. It's because of the Zombie King written on the note. It's a baby zombie that hasn't been weaned yet. President Steele and his team are dumbfounded by the sight. This thing is the Zombie King. You've got to be kidding me. But just as President Steele was about to step forward to find out what was going on, the president suddenly tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Be careful. The more harmless something looks, the more dangerous it can be." Because just a little while ago, the president knows what it's like. But the uninformed President Steele doesn't care. He rushed up and swung his sword. However, the little zombie who was breastfeeding dodged it with an extremely strange movement. The president, who saw this scene, couldn't help but shout, "Holy shit! I knew this would happen." He then yelled at the soldiers behind him with a wave of his hand, "Retreat, or we're all dead." As his words fell, all the soldiers then rushed towards the outside. But the unconquerable President Steele looked on with disdain. He doesn't believe that a little zombie can take over the world. And then he struck the zombie again. Looking at the zombie that was cut in half by the slash, President Steele thought that was the end of it. But the next second, the zombie split into two separate entities. President Steele was dumbfounded by the sight. What the fuck is this monster? And that's when it happened. The two separate little zombies suddenly let out a strange burst of speech and started fusing with each other in a strange way. After the president and a few others attacked the dungeon, all they found was a zombie with a pacifier. The real Ming had already escaped to the roof of the building. "Ming, before they realize it, why don't we let the zombies out and just run while they're gone?" Green Hair releases all the zombies in the city. In just a moment, a large number of zombies rushed towards Lanchi and the others. However, Lanchi didn't panic at all when he saw this scene. Just as the subordinate next to her was about to call for backup, Lanchi walked up alone and said, "No need, you can step back for now." After saying, she then stepped forward and removed the hairpin that bound her hair from her head. With a swish, the hairpin transformed into a sharp sword. In a flash, Lanchi is holding a sword, as valiant as a heroine. With a swish and a flash, Lanchi had already kicked the zombie in the jaw. Then there were countless thuds and bangs. In the next second, all the zombies on the street were kicked into the air by Lanchi. Lanchi used the bouncing force of a big tree, and with a swoosh, she's off into the air. The vice president was shocked to see this. The Lanchi in the air is whizzing by with a very fast sword. It's only a matter of breaths. Lanchi has landed. The zombies in the air are all cut to pieces. The vice president, who was eating his lunch at the moment, was dumbfounded. It's because a top-quality zombie sushi was cut out of his plate. Lanchi said with her arms wrapped around her, "That's all the zombies. Not enough to warm me up." The green hair on the rooftop is very angry. "I didn't realize that the zombies he just released were cleaned up by her. If only that chainsaw zombie from before was still there. I'm gonna make this bitch suffer." He then commanded the other zombies to charge towards Lanchi. But just then, two strange figures suddenly appeared in the alley. This dog and Blackie. "They're here too." Blackie walked up to one of the zombies and asked, "Have you seen this zombie in the picture?" With a chainsaw in his hand. But he hasn't even finished his sentence yet. The notice in his hand was flipped off by the zombie. Blackie is speechless at this scene. This wild zombie has no quality. And then Dog walked up and asked, "If we can't find a Jew, will the king beat us up too?" Hearing this, Blackie couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat as well. He then reassured himself that he would find him. Meanwhile, in the dungeon, the zombie with the pacifier reached out and shouted, "Let's play." Hearing this, the chairman and the two of them were speechless for a moment. President Steele even drew his sword and slashed at the zombie. But the zombie dodged it. At that moment, President Steele suddenly built up his strength. And with a swish, he cuts the zombie in two. And yet the zombie, cut in two, acted as if nothing had happened. After a few bounces, it's back together again. President Steele was furious. Then he cursed, "Don't run away. Dare you fight me for real?" After hearing that, the zombie suddenly pulled out the pacifier. And then something weird happened. Only to see the little zombie that was originally less than a meter, now it's a tall, beautiful zombie. Seeing this scene, the two presidents were dumbfounded. What the fuck is this? It turned into a long-legged female zombie. However, for the Steel president, a beautiful woman only affects how fast he can draw his sword. He then slashes at the female zombie with a double-edged slash. But the next moment he was dumbfounded. It was only because his dominating blow was caught by the female zombie with a flick of her hand. And no matter how hard he tried, the sword could not advance any further. Seeing this, President Steele knew that he was no match for her. Then he turned around and shouted, "What are you waiting for? Get over here and help." The chairman who heard this no longer hides. And then there was the boom. Mecha 1 shines. But he hasn't even had a chance to strike yet. He was sent flying by an inch strike from the female zombie. That horrible force directly pierced through a building. Finally, and coincidentally landed in front of Blackie and Dog. Looking at the human who suddenly appeared, Dog subconsciously asks, "He looks like he's dying. Should we save him?" Next to him, Blackie sniffed and spat in a hurry. "Are you stupid? We're zombies." That's it. Suddenly there's another loud bang on the other side of the dungeon. Then we saw President Steele flying out like a cannonball. Xiling and Lanchi rushed forward and asked him, "What's going on in the dungeon?" Seeing President Steele endure the pain, he raises his hand and points behind them. "See for yourselves." The two of them turn around in a hurry when they hear this. But when they saw the visitor clearly, they were shocked. Because that beautiful zombie is now leisurely leaning on the railing and yawning. And then she even threw a wink at Lanchi and the others. Watching this bizarre scene, Xiling instantly feels that this zombie must be something special. Lanchi, who was next to her, also hastily drew the sword in her hand. She says, "Work together later. Can't let her get away." But facing the pressure of the two presidents, this beautiful zombie is not panicking at all. It even hooked its hand at them in amusement. And meanwhile, on the other side, Jiangxi and the others are relaxing and eating barbecue. At this time, Vice President Steele picked up a glass of wine and said fawningly, "President Jiang, please drink." But Jiangxi had just picked up his glass and hadn't even had a chance to drink yet. There was a sudden rumble from the other side of the street. Xiao Xiao next to him couldn't help being stunned by this strange sound. Is something happening over there? When he heard this, Jiangxi then stood up and said, "Let's go. Let's go over there and see what's going on." She threw the sword in his hand towards her. With a whooshing sound, it only made a small cut on the female zombie's face. See this? Xiling, who was next to him, also rushed forward with his sword drawn. But the next second, she was kicked in the jaw by zombie. The pain is so intense that Xiling almost passes out. At that moment, the female zombie spoke up and said, "The speed is not bad. It's just a shame the power is so far off." Xiling can't stand it when he hears this. So she did a 360-degree spin in the air. And then she kicked the zombie in the head. However, such a fierce blow. The female zombie was fine. Xiling feels bad when he sees this. She then hastily retreated to the back with an instantaneous flash. Right in the middle of her retreat, Lanchi, who was next to her, rushed forward, wielding her sword, only to see countless sword chi surrounding the female zombie's body. Just for a moment, the surrounding buildings were split into countless pieces by the sword energy. But despite that, the female zombie is still unharmed. Meanwhile, on the other side, President Steele endured the pain and came to a secluded area. He took off his pants neatly. He then activated the backup motor on his neck. In the next second, there was a mechanical sound of clicking. A few seconds, President Steele has transformed into a Steel Knight. That's right. This is the Stainless Steel Academy's secret card. Heart of Steel number 1. The screen comes to Lanchi and his side again. It's a back-and-forth battle at the moment. But just as Xiling and Lanchi were about to launch a general attack on her, the female zombie in the scene suddenly stuck out a 2.5-meter tongue. And then a series of mutation growths occurred. The Lanchi duo who saw this scene were stunned on the spot. What the fuck is this? That's when the female zombie suddenly hit the ground with a slap. The powerful airflow immediately blew them away. And the female zombie who originally had a diminutive figure, she's turned into a mutant cow demon with 8-pack abs. But luckily, President Steele, who succeeded in his transformation, has finally arrived. At that moment, the Lanchi duo, who had been severely injured, shouted, "Retreat! You're no match for him." However, President Steele's self-confidence is so high that he doesn't even care about their cries. He then arrogantly walked up to the mutated bull demon. "Human, I hope you can withstand my blow. Come on. One move to win." At that moment, President Steele and Bull Demon Zombie swung their fists at the same time. As the fists clashed for a moment, the powerful shockwave sent Lanchi and Xiling flying. The loud explosion also caught the attention of Jiangxi, who was not far away. Soon, as the smoke slowly cleared. At this point, only half of President Steele's body was left in the field. On the other hand, the Bull Demon Zombie next to him is really fine. "Human, you've already lost. Give up your pointless resistance. I am the greatest zombie king this world has ever known. You're all going to die." What he doesn't realize is that Jiangxi, who is not far away, is about to arrive here. The new generation of Zombie King, in order to be able to destroy the world, and he's turned on his third transformation. The little unweaned zombie at the beginning. At this moment, he has become an emotionless ultimate zombie king. But against such a fearsome opponent, Lanchi and the others never gave up. But in the face of absolute power, their efforts are in vain. The zombie king simply raised his hand and flicked it. President Steele's mecha was instantly disintegrated. Lanchi and Xiling were sent flying 100 meters into the air. Luckily, Jiangxi appeared in time to save them. But before they could react, the zombie king ordered, "Go. Eat them." As his words finish, countless zombies rushed towards Lanchi and the others. Jiangxi was furious when he saw this. He then threw Lanchi and the two of them to the ground and yelled, "Are you guys blind? Get the fuck out of here." The zombies were confused when they heard that. Just for a moment, all the zombies stopped moving. And at this moment, the zombie king was puzzled and asked, "Who are you?" Jiangxi slowly walked into the horde of corpses, and then asked rhetorically, "You're the zombie king. So what am I?" With his words just falling out of his mouth, the countless zombies all kneeled down. A few minutes, all the zombies were trampled under Jiangxi's feet. "Why are you afraid to talk when you see my face?" Hearing this, the zombie king grinned. "So we're kindred spirits." Then he added, "Since there can only be one zombie king, so let's compare. That's it." He then punched Jiangxi in the face. But such a horrible punch was countered by Jiangxi's taunting words. "Have you not eaten?" The zombie king who heard this was instantly enraged. However, before he could react, Jiangxi's fist had already landed on him. It's just a split second. The force sent the zombie king flying several dozen kilometers. And finally, it flew off the land. It hit the carrier with a bang. Dr. Jiaming, who was watching the battle from the roof, was dumbfounded. How did such a horrible thing appear halfway through the battle? On the other hand, the zombie king on the other side laughed and said, "Interesting. Finally, I've met someone who can fight." With that, he plunged into the sea. Then he lifted the submarine, which weighed tens of thousands of tons, into the air. With a loud boom, Jiangxi is drowning in dust. Meanwhile, on top of a building, Blackie is giving the chairman emergency treatment. But then Dog suddenly tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Look over there. I think I can sense the king's breath." A figure instantly emerged from the center of the submarine, only to see Jiangxi fly into the sky after. Then he threw out a cable and wrapped it around the zombie king's neck and pulls it violently to his side and kicks him in the face. The terrifying force of the kick directly removed all of the zombie king's 5 senses. The zombie king is now completely enraged. He rushes to the ground and raises his submarine again. Then he swung it towards Jiangxi. With a loud boom, Jiangxi was knocked thousands of kilometers off an aircraft carrier. At that moment, Jiangxi's eyes turned cold and said, "Do you like smashing things that much? What's the matter? You can smash it if you can." He doesn't realize the gravity of the statement. And meanwhile, on the other side, after seeing how powerful this zombie king is, the president was hastily persuaded. "Let's evacuate quickly. What Dr. Jiaming has researched is not something your king can deal with." But he hadn't even finished his sentence, and Blackie smiled contemptuously and said, "Human, take a good look at this. No one in this world is a match for the great king. Not even the gods. Because the king is invincible." Jiangxi on the carrier suddenly made a flash. In the next second, he was already in front of the zombie king. Just when the zombie king was still surprised, wondering why Jiangxi's speed suddenly increased, Jiangxi's fist had already slammed into his face. The terrifying force directly sent the zombie king flying off the planet. The zombie king didn't even have time to catch his breath. A carrier was speeding toward him again. With a loud boom, the zombie king was smashed into the moon. At this moment, Xiao Xiao and the others in the arena have been completely dumbfounded. The zombie king on the moon has a sudden burst of power. Next second, the carrier is headed straight for Earth again. And with it, the zombie king's rage. Seeing this scene, Jiangxi immediately jumped on the spot with a thud and rushes towards the Zombie King. But then the Zombie King suddenly entered the carrier and started destroying the nuclear reactor. Just as Jiangxi reaches the carrier, a loud boom was heard across the continent. Xiao Xiao, who saw this scene, was screaming for help. However, as that mushroom cloud slowly dissipated in the air, Jiangxi landed on the battleship in one piece. He then began to say in a mocking manner, "That's not even enough damage to tickle me." The Zombie King is completely speechless at this point. And then he began to build up his strength again. Next Sisend. His arm quickly lengthens and moves towards Jiangxi. It's just a split second. Jiangxi was sent flying into a tall building. And then the Zombie King spoke again. "Since neither of us can do anything about the other, why don't we work together to destroy the world?" Meanwhile, on the chairman's side, after seeing the Zombie King's terrifying strength, he began to persuade again. "We'd better run quickly. I know your king is strong when he transforms, but they can't just keep fighting." He hasn't even finished his sentence yet. And then Blackie interrupts him and says, "Who says our great king can only transform once?" The president, who heard this, was full of shock. He didn't realize that Jiangxi had a third form. The scene is once again on Jiangxi's side. He got up from the rubble and said, "I'm not interested in destroying the world. Actually, I'd rather live in peace with the humans. Only a weakling would want to destroy the world." The Zombie King was speechless when he heard this. He didn't realize that as a zombie, Jiangxi still wanted to make friends with humans. Just when he's wondering what's going on, Jiangxi suddenly transformed again. His original gray skin slowly began to break apart. With a roar of rage, in the next second, Jiangxi had transformed into a white-skinned young man. Lanchi and the others who saw the scene had question marks on their faces. What the fuck is this? Is he a human or a zombie? On the other side of the room, Dog slapped the president in the face and said, "Check it out. This is the real power of our king." When the chairman saw the white boy on the high floor, he was in a state of disbelief. No way, how did a zombie become a human? Just then the sky suddenly changed. In no time at all, it began to rain. The Zombie King was confused when he saw Jiangxi's transformation. "Am I fighting a human?" And then he went back up to find out what was going on. But as his fist was about to hit Jiangxi's face, the space around him suddenly changed. The raindrops that had been falling stopped in midair as if they were standing still. At that moment, Jiangxi suddenly raised his hand and waved it. Next Sisend. The Zombie King's body was split into countless pieces in an instant. At the same time, the raindrops flew backward. It's not just that. Even Xiling and the others are floating in the air. Even the fish in the ocean are affected. At this point, the Zombie King, who was already only halfway through his body, was all fear. He didn't realize that the gap between himself and Jiangxi was so great. Jiangxi slowly walked up and said, "You didn't know where to drink milk when I was the Zombie King."
That's it for today's video. Please tell us in the comments which style of recaps you prefer. Simple ones or ones with sound effects and different animations. If you like our content, be sure to hit that like button. Also, subscribe and click the bell icon so you get the latest updates.